I'm really excited about this next panel. It's about the family perspective. And we've heard from doctors, we've heard from executive directors of organizations, but it's really critical as we think about family, which is the core part of this. And Pam has told me just to turn it over to her, and she will provide all the details.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. How fabulous it is to be here with all of you, right? Isn't it exciting? Thank you to Boston Children's Hospital for bringing us all together today and giving us an opportunity to stretch our minds to find better solutions for our children and our families. My name is Pam Sager. I am the relatively new Executive Director of PAL, Parent Professional Advocacy League, since July. I came to my dream job late in life after a long career as a business lawyer. Don't tell anyone. I'm here today in two capacities, as the ED of PAL, but mostly as a family member with lived experience. I'm a proud mother of two daughters, ages 21 and 25. My oldest has significant mental health needs and started me on this ever-interesting path. I will share more of my family story later. First, I'd like to introduce you to Tashena Marie, a young woman who is quickly becoming my hero. Not only is she an incredible parent to several children, she is an exceptional advocate and is dedicated to leaving those around her better than she found them. I feel lucky to have met Tashena, and even luckier to learn from her every day. Tashena?
Thank you so much for that, Pam. And thank you, everyone, for having me tonight. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really honored to be able to share a part of my story with you. As you know, my name's Tashena. I live in rural central Massachusetts. I'm a mother to 4 bio and 2 bonus kids. I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. I'm an Indigenous Mi'kmaq from a First Nations tribe in Canada. I am pansexual and neurodivergent. I grew up as Tashena, the Indian girl with a weird name and a weird family who's poor and very awkward. I guess you could say the odds were never exactly in my favor. And mental health in my family has always been a struggle. It's affected me, my sister, my mother, my father, and now my own children. All of my children have at some point had either behavioral, medical, or mental health challenges or delays. As a parent, you always want to protect your kids from the bad things that you felt and went through as a child. And I went through a lot of bad things. My story starts when I was really young. I was born to a young mother, and when I was about 6 months old, she voluntarily put me in foster care because I had dislocated hips and medical needs she could not manage. Eventually, I was returned to her care, and during those early years, I struggled with communication. I could communicate about facts if you asked me directly, but describing my feelings, my needs, and pain was another story. Not being able to communicate these things, even as a child, made me feel overwhelmed and stuck. This is the first time I remember feeling that I just wanted to not exist. Fortunately, there was help. I was set up for early intervention, which was new at the time, and Head Start. I don't have much memories from these programs, but I do believe they had a positive impact on me, both socially and from a communication standpoint. While we have come a long way with screening children, I do wish we had more, particularly for social delays and especially for females. Appropriate screenings for young children can determine better interventions and help avoid more serious issues down the line. So for me, kindergarten was overwhelming and exhausting. It seemed everything in kindergarten was about socializing, and I hated every single part of socializing. I was smart, but I was held back because of my lack of appropriate social skills. This took a mental toll on my 5-year-old self, and again, I felt like I just did not want to exist. And while we often say that kids are resilient, I can't stress enough how these experiences negatively affected me, my self-esteem, and my mental health. People often think that if children don't bring something up, they're okay. I'm here to tell you they're not. Many kids, and not just those with communication difficulties, do not share what they're thinking. I didn't know how to express this at all, or even if it should be expressed. So everyone assumed I was fine. We need to be checking in with kids today and not just assume they're going to tell us what's going on. If we can intervene with things like depression and anxiety at a young age, how many kids can be saved? Not just physically, but emotionally. Thankfully, when I made it first grade, I was able to join Cool Kids Choir after school. It worked great for me. It allowed me to be part of a group without pressure to socialize and to learn social emotional skills and develop confidence. I think it's extremely important to recognize how impactful these experiences are for children. Cool Kids Choir was a saving grace for me. There are few social supports available in the area where I live. We need more supports and more relationship fostering activities in schools and in our communities. Unfortunately, Cool Kids Choir did not prevent chaos from erupting through my life. My dad was a vet with severe PTSD and paranoia. My dad and my mom separated, and my grandmother stepped in to help as another parent. My grandmother is a wholehearted Indigenous woman with her own culture and her own trauma issues. I love my grandma, but it was complicated. With all the mental health issues, intergenerational trauma, and no support from my dad's family, our whole dynamic became very unhealthy. I'd love to talk more about intergenerational trauma with you at some point, but I would need a lot more time. So teenage years were difficult for me, my siblings, and my mother. At 13, my sibling, who's just a year younger than me, started to self-harm. I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure that all three of us were self-harming in some way at this point. My mom had remarried and added 2 little boys to the mix. Being home was difficult because I felt like I had to be responsible for everyone there. I know now that this is a feeling shared by many siblings. I coped with the stress of my family by staying at the after-school program, the North Brookfield Youth Center. It was a welcome break, and it was my safe place to go. Fast forward a few years, my mom and my stepdad separated. My mom started drinking heavily, and she lost her job due to debilitating arthritis. We all had to move into my grandmother's house. My mental health took a severe decline. My mom's mental health took a severe decline, as did my siblings. There was many hospitalizations. It was so chaotic, I can't even remember who was hospitalized first, what the timeline was at all. I just remember feeling helpless and small. And it didn't seem that the hospital helped at all. They were sent home after a few days with no resources, no follow-up, no one to call. There was a bright light for me during that time. After reconnecting with the youth center, I got my first job offer as a teen leader. Life at school was tough, and life at home was unbearable, but I had the youth center where I could do things I was good at. I could help people. I could teach people. It felt good to be needed in a positive way. And I felt like, for the first time, I could be more than my family situation and my grades. I had an opportunity to be somewhere I could thrive. My siblings' solution to the home chaos was to keep running away. After several runaways, they were forcibly admitted to a hospital. They were there for a long time, and we couldn't visit them. I didn't understand this. How is someone's mental health going to get better if they can't even see the people they love? It didn't get better, and it didn't make sense. Many times, children in the custody of state agencies and even in some psychiatric hospitals are unable to see their loved ones without jumping through major hoops. Loved ones, families, and social supports are critical to the improved mental health of children. Despite everything I was dealing with at home, I was thriving at the youth center and at school. And when I was 16 years old, I was invited to speak publicly on the importance of teen leadership in Florida, Boston, New York, and other places. These opportunities made me forget about everything else going on at home. These opportunities meant so much to me. They gave me a huge sense of hope that I could be more than my past, that there was a bigger picture to life than what was in my small town. My story mattered, and it made a difference in other people's lives, and that I mattered. However, with the severe mental health issues in my family and the lack of support I was receiving, my grades eventually declined, which led to the youth center firing me. I was devastated. I could not believe I no longer had access to the only safe community I had known. I could not believe they fired me when I was going through such a difficult time. I spiraled. I started drinking and became a teen mom. But in the midst of all this, I still managed to graduate. With my children now, I often find myself trying to navigate the system and often feel like a failure. My stepdaughter has had a few calls to mobile crisis in the last few years, and thank goodness I know about mobile crisis. Many parents do not. In some instances, they were able to calm her down, which I am very thankful for. Other times, we were off to the ER. The first time was just a few hours wait. The last time, we were there for almost a full day. And this time, she was only this last time, she was only admitted due to her past history with anxiety, and not because she was at risk of harming herself. And this was confusing and frustrating for all of us. Those ER visits were made more difficult because only one parent can be with her. And as the step-parent, it was not me. And unfortunately, I was the one, not Dad, who knew what to do. Our solution was to put me on speakerphone. And thank goodness for today's technology, because it allowed me to tell my stepdaughter, even though I can't be there, I'm always in her pocket. Last year, we got her into in-home therapy, and because she was referred to the emergency department, we were able to get her priority on the wait list, and we only had to wait a few weeks. She was also set up with a therapeutic mentor and DCF support for her and her mother. With those supports, she and her situation improved considerably. And then, of course, because things began to improve, they dropped services, all of them, at once. I didn't understand why take them away all at the same time after just a short period of time. We're talking about 3 months. So just a short time later, she started to spiral again and was unable to manage. This time, it took her almost a year to get into in-home therapy. And 10 months later, she's still on a wait list for a psychologist and a new outpatient therapist. Support should not be nothing at all, be all or nothing. My oldest son, who's 13 as well, has struggled with anxiety and ADHD, especially when it comes to school. After 6 months, we were able to get him to see a recommended psychologist for an evaluation. And before being made final, we were not allowed any input at all. The school is now refusing to test him because he was already tested within the year. All of these adults are running around and doing things, and my son is still struggling. How does he get the support he needs to be successful? And I am grateful that we have Mass Health and his health insurance covered it, but they won't cover more testing for at least another year. And I don't know what I would do if I couldn't afford that testing, because I could barely afford to drive him there. I'm also ever grateful for my own experience, because it has helped me help my children. As a parent, I've worked so hard to stop the intergenerational trauma. When my kids struggle, the one thing I remember is community and connection. It's really important for me to help my kids reach out to other family members, to visit with aunts, uncles, grandparents, and friends, to be aware of family dinners, to volunteer outside of school and participate in clubs and activities. This has made a huge difference for my children. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of opportunities in rural Mass, so it's often difficult. If I could wave a magic wand and have funding for community centers in every single town or general area, I would, with transportation, of course. And when I help my children, I know that I can use my knowledge and my personal experience to help other parents with their children. I know that I can help others build community and connection and hopefully better mental health. Reading about and learning about how my elders and the Indigenous people think about mental health has been a huge help. The Indigenous people feel that the solution to many mental health struggles lies in community. Human beings need strong, healthy communities and connections. We have built these walls so thick, so tall, and with so much space in between us, and now even with devices and TV screens, they put us further apart. We're not connected to each other anymore. When you don't have a sense of community, you're at much higher risk for struggling with your mental health. In our Indigenous culture, a lot of our beliefs, language, our dances, and holidays were taken away from us. So we had no choice but to fit in to a different community or feel alone and isolated. We are human beings, whether we are good at making connections through verbal communication, nonverbal communication, or just existing in each other's presence. There are a million different ways we can connect with each other to form a sense of community and a sense of belonging. I strongly feel like the foundation of an overall good mental health is building strong community and strong connections. I always wondered if things would have been different for my mom when my sister was struggling with her mental health, if she had someone to talk to, someone that had been through the same thing. What if my mom knew she wasn't alone? What if she had some form of community? Would that have made a difference in her mental health struggles? What if there was less stigma on getting help and getting help was easier? I feel lucky and blessed that I have the support and the opportunities and just an extremely overly stubborn personality. And that's really the only reason why I think I'm here today. When I help families today, I think about helping my mom, helping my siblings, helping little me as a kid. These supports for the children affected, the siblings affected, the parents affected, the entire families affected are so important. It really needs to be a whole community effort. In and about community, teamwork really does make the dream work. And guess I'll give it back to you, Pam.
Wow, huh? Right? Support and opportunities. They gave me a huge sense of hope that I could be more than my past, that there was a bigger picture to life, that my story mattered, that I mattered. Support and opportunities. My story is different from Tashena's, but the desperation and despair are the same. I love my daughters and want the best for them. I want to save them from hurt and harm and keep them healthy. But my kids have educated white parents with jobs and enough means to pay for private health insurance. My kids grew up in suburbia with activities, education, and a cul-de-sac. Yet we spent hours in EDs, in psych hospitals, with therapists. Our furniture was torn up, our bedrooms had keypad locks on them, and our doors were broken. From the time our oldest was 3 or 4 until she was 14, when she left our home, this was our life. I, too, had a frightened little 5-year-old. I didn't really know it, but she did. What do you do when your 5-year-old, after destroying her bedroom, cries to you that there's something wrong with her and needs help? What do you do? My heart still shatters thinking about it. I knew this was not typical behavior. I knew something was not quite right. But where should I start? Who do I talk to? The worry and questioning sets in. Maybe I'm just not parenting right. Maybe if I do this or I do that, things will be better. Maybe I'm not using the sticker charts right. Can my pediatrician help? What do I do? This experience made it abundantly evident that we, as a community, need to provide a clear and easily accessible place for families to start. All families, of all colors, of all ethnic backgrounds, and from all cultures. They need a safe, non-judgmental place to start. Pediatricians, of course, are the common thread. Mental health education is key. When I looked around, I knew I was lucky. I had already been around the block a time or two in unfamiliar territory. Infertility, adoption. My oldest was adopted at birth. When I embarked on those journeys, I learned everything I could. I researched, I read, and I reached out. I was by nature someone who dove deep, an information gatherer, but it was hard, really hard. Getting the right information, getting the right people, finding the right support, finding something that would help, and sorting through it all was just exhausting. We tried different therapies with different therapists in different states. We tried different meds in different formulations with different methods of delivery. Nothing really seemed to make a big difference. On our first visit to the ED, we were released with no follow-up resources because we had private insurance and not Mass Health. What? I was shocked. Thankfully, years later, I was able to testify for mental health parity, and while it's better, we know it's still not perfect. There was no one place to go, no coordination of effort, literally no help for the weary. I was a working parent with a second full-time job of trying to get help for my child and family. I had never heard of or been told about CBHI, which at that time was in its infancy. Our entire family, our mental health, and our wallet was suffering. Eventually, we found a therapist who knew about McPAP. She guided us on how to get there. From there, we got the right psychiatrist. And from there, we got to PAL. PAL helped me learn about CBHI and Mass Health, and in conjunction with our therapist, about DMH. PAL helped me to understand the mental health system in Massachusetts. It helped me to learn what services might be available to us and what questions to ask. PAL staff, all with lived experience, were my people. They got it. PAL gave me direction and hope. Even still, our family was hanging on by a thread. Volatility in our home was taking its toll. Our younger daughter was affected by it. We were all affected by it. Therapy appointments once a week were not cutting it. Our ED visits were many. I would drop everything I was doing and go. I would sit next to my daughter in a sterile room, no TV, no food, none of her regular meds, and often no support for hours on end. Getting the hospital to give her her regular psych meds was a real problem. I would just shake my head and wonder, how is she ever going to get regulated here if they're not giving her meds? It's going to be a sure thing. We're looking at an inpatient admission. We just waited and waited. We were lucky, though. We were not the 12-year-old who went to the ED for the first time ever and waited over 3 weeks, wondering why no one would help her. We were not the 8-year-old foster child who waited over 2 months. These children deserve better care. We need to up our game for them. Often the admitting hospitals were not nearby, so the drives for visits were tough. I was self-employed and could rearrange my schedule. We were a 2-parent family with cars. I could wait with my daughter in the ED and drive the distance needed to visit her. Many families cannot do those things. How sad and frightening it must be for a child or young person to be in crisis and away from the people they love. How could they possibly feel safe and cared for and hopeful? And the family, they're just devastated. We experienced continued issues with discharge planning. It was inadequate and honestly, often non-existent. We need to make this easier, more family-driven, and more amenable to healing. We need more safe spaces for distressed children and their families. We need to stop the revolving door of hospitalizations by providing longer-term community support and care and proper discharge planning. We were lucky enough to get on Mass Health and obtain CBHI services. My saving grace during that time was our family partner. He showed up and he stuck with us. I needed someone to see the behavior in my home. I was so thankful. And my daughter, she had someone who continued to show up. When my daughter eventually went into a group living environment with the help of DMH, there was something that made a difference for her as well. Shh, don't tell Mass Health and DMH. Though it was not allowed, there was considerable overlap between our family partner and her GLE. That overlap and continuity of care really made a huge difference for her. Everything didn't just stop with the family partner. We were able to do a slow transition. I felt like she was treated respectfully and gently. Sometimes breaking the rules might be okay. There are many more stories and experiences, bad and good, that I could tell. Suffice it to say, she is now 25, and the need for hospitalizations have been fewer, and she is living a bit more independently in supported housing. Her job right now is to work at being alive. I still hold out hope that one day she will be fully independent. Her gifts to me have been great. I would not know what I know now. I would not have the compassion I have now. I would not have the passion I have now if it weren't for her in this journey. I am thankful to her for that. Where do we go from here? Well, we get back to work. As you know, these are historic times. There are greater mental health needs in our communities than ever. If we fail to devote significant effort to helping our children, the devastation will continue to grow, affecting all aspects of our lives and livelihoods. While I am thrilled with the passage of the ABC Act, I am very concerned about thoughtful and timely implementation of it. We need to be dogged in our efforts to fully implement as soon as possible, and then to evaluate, to review, and to ask the hard questions. Is it working? Do we need to shift? Do we need another approach to reach our goals? We need a dedicated and concerted effort at cross-agency initiatives, both in the public and the private sectors. We need to roll up our sleeves and work together toward long-term solutions and humble ourselves in the process. And while I have much hope in many of the current mental health initiatives for our kids, they will fail without an available and competent workforce that understands the needs of children and families. Let's get specific, directed, and targeted. There are many ways to provide incentives for education and dedication to the work of raising and nurturing mentally well kids and families. We must do that now. If there ever was a time to put our money where our mouth is, this is it. And finally, we need families at the table. We should never be guessing what they need. We should ask, and ask again, and ask again. Support and opportunities. We can help kids have that huge sense of hope. We can help them believe that they can be more than their past, that there is a bigger picture in life, that their stories matter, and that they matter. Let's get this right. Embrace children, embrace families, create the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pam and Tanisha. This is great. It's really important that we continue to center families in this conversation and discussion we're having today, so thank you.